On October 7, 2023, the world watched in horror as a long-simmering conflict erupted. An assault of staggering scale shattered the fragile status quo of the region. The violence reignited a war that has defined the Middle East for generations. But to truly understand the violence of today, one must look back over a century. The territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea holds deep significance. For centuries, this land was a province of the vast Ottoman Empire. A diverse region home to Muslim, Christian, and Jewish communities living side by side. However, the geopolitical landscape fractured violently following World War I. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, leading to the partition of its former territories. The British Empire subsequently assumed control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate. During the British Mandate period, the region saw a massive influx of Jewish immigrants. Many were fleeing severe and escalating anti-Semitic persecution across Europe. Simultaneously, the Zionist movement gained traction, seeking to establish a Jewish national home. At the same time, a growing Palestinian Arab nationalist movement sought its own independence. This rising immigration, coupled with competing national aspirations, led to escalating friction. The 1920s and 30s were marked by frequent, deadly riots and organized rebellions. The British authorities struggled to manage the violence and conflicting promises made to both sides. By 1947, Britain handed the intractable problem over to the newly formed United Nations. The UN proposed partitioning the land into two separate, independent states. Jerusalem, holy to multiple faiths, was to be placed under international administration. The Jewish leadership accepted the partition plan, a crucial step towards statehood. Arab leaders rejected the UN plan entirely, viewing it as a profound injustice and theft of land. The rejection of the partition plan instantly sparked the devastating 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Following months of brutal fighting, the State of Israel formally declared its independence. For the Arab population, the outcome of the war was a catastrophic defeat and displacement. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were forcibly expelled from their homes and villages. This mass exodus and permanent displacement became known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. The refugees fled to the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and neighboring Arab countries. The right of return for these refugees remains one of the most intractable issues of the conflict. For Israel, the 1948 war secured its existence but initiated a state of perpetual, armed vigilance. Decades of border skirmishes and rising regional tensions exploded again in the summer of 1967. In what became known as the Six-Day War, Israel launched a preemptive strike. In less than a week, Israel achieved a stunning, overwhelming military victory. Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. It also captured East Jerusalem, bringing millions of Palestinians under Israeli military occupation. This occupation fundamentally altered the dynamic of the conflict, laying the groundwork for decades of resistance. The illusion of absolute Israeli military invincibility was shattered 6 years later. In 1973, a coalition of Arab states launched a surprise attack on the holy day of Yom Kippur. The Yom Kippur War resulted in heavy casualties and profound psychological trauma for Israel. Though Israel ultimately repelled the attack, the war forced a bitter re-evaluation of national security. Despite the bloodshed, the subsequent decades witnessed monumental, unprecedented attempts at peace. The Camp David Accords in 1978 led to a historic peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. In the 1990s, the Oslo Accords established the Palestinian Authority, bringing hope for a two-state solution. But the peace process eventually collapsed, derailed by political assassinations and deep mistrust. Continued Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank fueled deep Palestinian anger and resentment. Simultaneously, waves of deadly suicide bombings perpetrated by Palestinian militants terrorized Israeli civilians. In this chaotic vacuum of failed diplomacy and violence, Hamas rose to massive political prominence. Hamas, an Islamist militant and political organization, fiercely rejected the Oslo peace process entirely. In 2006, Hamas won a shocking victory in the Palestinian legislative elections. The victory escalated political tensions, leading to a brief, incredibly violent Palestinian civil war. By the summer of 2007, Hamas had forcibly seized complete control of the Gaza Strip. In response to the Hamas takeover, Israel and Egypt imposed a comprehensive blockade on Gaza. The blockade strictly severely limited the movement of goods, supplies, and people in and out of the territory. Gaza became increasingly isolated, its economy utterly crippled, and its infrastructure crumbling. The blockade set the stage for recurring, devastating cycles of rocket fire and intense Israeli military retaliation. By late 2023, despite the underlying ever-present tensions, the border area appeared relatively quiet. Many Israeli officials believed a broader conflict was effectively deterred. It was a fatal illusion. On the morning of October 7, 2023, the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, the skies filled with fire. Hamas launched a massive coordinated surprise attack, firing thousands of rockets simultaneously. The sheer scale and sophistication of the rocket barrage were designed to overwhelm the Iron Dome defenses. But the unprecedented rocket fire was merely a diversion for a far more sinister ground operation. Under the heavy cover of the rockets, Hamas militants systematically breached the fortified border fence. Militants infiltrated southern Israel by land using trucks and motorcycles, bypassing military outposts. They even infiltrated by air, using motorized paragliders to silently glide over the defenses. The infiltration was massive, involving thousands of heavily armed militants pouring across the border. The Israeli military and intelligence apparatus were caught completely and catastrophically by surprise. The militants brutally assaulted military bases, small rural farming communities known as kibbutzim, and towns. They moved from house to house, executing civilians in their homes and setting buildings on fire. Entire families were murdered in their safe rooms. The atrocities documented on social media. Simultaneously, a massive massacre unfolded at the Nova Outdoor Music Festival in the desert. Hundreds of young festival goers were gunned down as they attempted to flee across the open fields. The assault was incredibly ruthless, systematically targeting civilians with unprecedented barbarity. It took hours for the Israeli military to fully mobilize and mount a coordinated response to the invasion. By the time the military secured the border communities, the scale of the massacre was undeniable. The final death toll was staggering and incomprehensible. Approximately 1,200 people were killed. It was the deadliest single day for Jews since the Holocaust, shattering the nation's sense of security. Furthermore, over 240 hostages were abducted by militants during the chaos. Men, women, children, and the elderly were violently dragged back into the labyrinth of the Gaza Strip. The brutal mass kidnapping plunged Israel into a state of agonizing, collective trauma and desperation. In the immediate chaotic aftermath of the massacres, the Israeli government declared a formal state of war. Operation Swords of Iron was launched with two primary, unyielding objectives. The military vowed to completely dismantle Hamas's military capabilities and governorship. The second objective was the safe return of all the hostages held captive in Gaza. Israel initiated a devastating, unprecedented aerial bombardment campaign across the dense Gaza Strip. The military targeted extensive underground tunnel networks and Hamas infrastructure embedded in civilian areas. The sheer scale of the bombardment was catastrophic, reducing entire sprawling neighborhoods to twisted rubble. The civilian death toll in Gaza began to climb precipitously, drawing intense international alarm. The ferocity of the war sparked massive protests worldwide and deep geopolitical polarization. Global calls for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire mounted as the destruction worsened daily. A severe humanitarian crisis rapidly unfolded as the total military blockade tightly choked the territory. Israel completely cut off electricity, fuel supplies, food deliveries, and essential medical equipment. Hospitals quickly collapsed under the massive influx of casualties and the severe lack of resources. Over 1 million Palestinians were forcibly displaced, ordered to evacuate southward by the military. The mass evacuation created sprawling, desperate tent cities utterly lacking basic sanitation and shelter. Weeks after the initial, Israeli ground forces pushed deep into northern Gaza. The soldiers engaged in brutal, deadly close-quarters urban combat with entrenched Hamas militants. The war quickly evolved into a grinding and grueling campaign within a vast labyrinth of lines. The military faced immense challenges navigating the extensive, heavily booby-trapped subterranean tunnel network. Casualties mounted on both sides as the intense ground war expanded slowly southward. As the destructive conflict dragged on for months, the shockwaves reverberated globally. The war ignited a broader regional escalation, raising immense fears of a wider Middle Eastern war. Hezbollah forces in Lebanon engaged in daily, deadly cross-border artillery exchanges with Israel. Simultaneously, Houthi militants in Yemen launched missiles and attacked vital global shipping lanes. Meanwhile, the agonizing plight of the hostages remained a central, searing wound for the Israeli public. Massive weekly protests erupted in Israel, demanding the government secure a hostage deal immediately. Months of grueling international negotiations and temporary ceasefires brought some hostages safely home. But many remain trapped in the dark tunnels of Gaza, enduring unimaginable, prolonged suffering. The families of the captives lived in a state of perpetual, agonizing, suspended animation and dread. On both sides of the militarized border, the trauma of October 7th and the ensuing war remain. The physical and psychological landscape of the entire region has been forever altered by the violence. A definitive resolution to the century-old conflict seems further away and more intractable than ever. For everyone involved, the events of that October morning have tragically rewritten their shared history.